Welcome. It's just gone 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Thursday, 6th of June, and you are watching episode 135 of Regional Wrap. Regional Wrap, providing an insight on the issues affecting regional Australia and giving a voice to regional residents. My name is Bill Bates, and joining me on this episode, volunteer organisations Torpedoed by Blue Cards, is my guest Peter Graham, President, Gulf Zone, Volunteer Marine Rescue. At the age of 15, Peter joined the Royal Australian Navy, which was the beginning of a long and varied maritime career. In 1993, he joined the Australian Volunteer Coast Guard in Cairns as a rescue vessel crewman and base radio operator. In 1994, he moved to Weipa, and there was no Marine Rescue Service there at the time. He joined the State Emergency Service instead. During that year, he was approached by what was back then Air Sea Rescue to assist in establishing a Marine Rescue Service in the community and the surrounding Gulf of Carpentaria, right over to the NT border. In 1997, the Air Sea Rescue had a name change to the Volunteer Marine Rescue Queensland. At the time, there were two marine rescue services in Queensland, with the other being the Australian Volunteer Coast Guard. Both were charities and poorly supported by the Queensland Government and relied on donations in the main. About that time, Peter realised they needed to be amalgamated, so commenced his decades-long journey to achieve that outcome. The amalgamation of both organisations will officially take effect on the 1st of July this year, and it will be known as Marine Rescue Queensland, with recognition both through legislation and with a budget of 29 million for the first year of operation. Welcome, Peter.
Good evening, one and all.
Well, I suppose you're happy with the achievement, but before we get on to the amalgamation, the process, the difference in the two organisations and the implications of the blue card requirements, maybe you can just touch on a bit more of your personal background about where you were born and how you got the sea bug sort of thing. Or was it a childhood experience, or was it just something that dawned upon you?
It was certainly a childhood experience. I came from a naval family that were like a lot of military kids. We were dragged all over the world behind mum and dad as we travelled to different parts of the world while dad served. He was in the Navy, and he also joined as a very young man and worked we can't do it anymore, but back then you could work your way through the ranks to become an officer. And he did manage to do that. He was a diver, clearance diver, and consequently spent quite a lot of time in some very strange places, doing some very strange things, and much to my mother's horror. But of course, it was that I was hooked. He would take me on board the ships. He would take me, we'd go from England to Germany or somewhere or whatever it might be at the time, and I'd be hanging around bases and couldn't get enough of it. So literally the day I was old enough, I turned 15, I was away, signed up for 12 years, I think was the minimum back then.
Was that an apprenticeship?
No, that was another scheme. That was Artificers.
Yeah.
No, 15, you went in, no choice. You just signed for 12. You didn't have a choice. Over 17, you could sign for 9.
Yeah.
So from there, I eventually came out of the Navy, and then it was a long line of prawn trawlers to charter vessels to cargo ships to all sorts of things. And gradually moving closer and closer to North Queensland from where I was born and went to school in King's Cross. So having been a member at all levels in both organisations, from raw deck crew to being on the top table, making the decisions for the organisation, I've got a fair grasp of what's been going on. My specialty, just by locations, has become remote units, and it's a challenge. Not even a challenge. It's just such a wonderful spread of cultures and people You have the bottom end of the Gulf, Mornington Island, places like that, where it's pretty much all Aboriginal. Then you move around till you get midway through that area, and you get to Weipa, and it's very much a European community. And then again move north into the islands, and we have bases through up to New Guinea, and that's a totally different culture again. And then to bring those cultures together for regular meetings and exercises is a joy to see how they all work together. It's quite an interesting combination, and brings up challenges that I just absolutely love dealing with these guys and girls.
Okay, then. Can you just outline a little bit of difference between the two organisations, the Volunteer Coast Guard and your Marine Rescue Service? Say, just as you started the amalgamation process.
It's what, but I mean, the first thing you need to understand that Coast Guard has always been a national body. So back in the days, they had organisations in most states. Over a period of time, they fell away and converted to volunteer marine rescue organisation, and there was reasons in each state for them doing that. And gradually, Coast Guard's national network really came back to being now, I think, a couple of boats in South Australia. I think Victoria is on the move to change, and that really only leaves Queensland as the jewel in Coast Guard's crown. So they're controlled quite strictly from a national body, a national board that I think is based in Canberra now. And they very much control the day-to-day operations of Coast Guard units. On the other side of the coin, you have Volunteer Marine Rescue, which is a Queensland-based organisation run from Queensland and made up of members of units around the state that have a controlling body there. So that each unit, unlike Coast Guard, where they have only the one national constitution, the VMR units all have their own individual constitutions, and therefore they can make decisions on what they do with their money, how they do it, how they operate within the legislation, within the laws. Whereas Coast Guard are very much, they'll tell you if you can buy this piece of equipment or you can't, and so on and so forth. It's a lot more regulated from above, whereas Marine Rescue is probably the easiest way to say it, is Marine Rescue has always been driven from the deck up. So the deck demands through just two people, it gets to the top level, and they demand what they want done, and it's up to those people to get it done. Whereas Coast Guard, it comes from the top down. So there's some pitfalls in the systems here and there. So as I said, it became obvious to me that these two needed to be combined. They were very poorly funded, probably $2 million a year to run a marine statewide, just wasn't working. So I did try for quite a long time calling summits, and I really wasn't quite getting there because of the national board with the Coast Guard. And then one day I heard the angels sing, and Craig Crawford was appointed Minister for Emergency Services, living here in my backyard. So when the angels stopped singing, I made an appointment to go and see Craig at the earliest possible convenience, explained to him what the situation was within the state. He saw it before I'd left the office. And he then went off to, this was to be his legacy for his stay. If nothing else, this was the one thing he was going to get done. And he certainly, during his time in that portfolio, he got the ball rolling, and it picked up speed very quickly from there.
Can you give us a bit of an idea of the resistance from people within both organisations, if there was any? I mean, all these things always ruffle someone's feathers and that. Was there a lot, and how did you deal with it? Or was it just, it was going to happen anyway, sort of thing, because the poor situation with the Volunteer Coast Guard?
I think, look, the biggest enemy during all of this has been lack of information being passed on, or maybe being passed on not quite the right way. You find even after 4 or 5 years of this process, which is what it's taken to come to a head now, 1st of July, it's legislated and we're off and running as a Marine Rescue Queensland. But it's been going to units 4 years into the process and being asked questions that have been passed, the information has been passed down the line many times. For some reason, it gets construed. I don't know what happens to it really, but you keep getting the same questions after 4 years that you should have been resolved years ago. So that's caused in both sides a lot of suspicion. There's been rumours that part of the problem too has been once the government got it, God help us, once the government got involved, and I must say my original simple mind, I had the two state bodies getting together, Coast Guard, VMR, sorting out what the uniform was going to look like, just tidy up the training, and the government, all they had to do, their one job was to sever the connection with National Coast Guard. We'd work the rest out ourselves. How ignorant I was to think the government was going to do that.
Especially if there's money involved that they're going to give you.
We're now, I've lost track of how many project specialists have gone through this process. Quite a few of them have just left. They've just given up and departed, and someone else has replaced them. But we're finally there now. We're at that point where we've got the legislation in place. It's now a matter of transitioning units, probably 3 or 4 at a time. And the first couple, we've hit a few roadblocks. I think the government's realised now, we've been appointed a chief officer for the two. Tony Wolff has now realised that possibly they're not ready. The department's not ready. They thought the minister would definitely have this date, but he's not going to have that date of 1st of July to have everyone over. They've conceded they haven't been listening to the volunteers. And they now, and personally, I've been trying to stop the thing or at least pause it for the last 6 months. And I think now they've seen it themselves finally that it's got to be fine tuned. It's ready to go. It's right, but they've gone in a bit over the top and not looked at some of the dot the I's, cross the T's, which are the important ones for the volunteers.
Yes. The other thing is too, being different organisations and also with the volunteer marine rescue service and being individual entities in each side, equipments and things like that. How compatible are they? And then what's the sort of scale of things that have to be renewed or replaced or things like that to get everyone into the same or appropriate, because you can't have the same, because some situations are different in the Gulf versus out off Brisbane, so you might have to have different boats, but working out all that to ensure you've got the capability in each location, and the onboard equipment would have to be pretty much the same, but having the right boat in the right place.
That's an easy one. That's an easy one, Bill. For years, these 2 years, or at deck level, now we must make that quite clear. At deck level, the units, irrespective of what they wear, work very well together. Always have done, and quite often you'll have a vessel from each side attend the one job, and they're quite familiar with each other, with working each other. They know each other in their own areas, and consequently,
they drink with each other.
Sorry, well. I can only speak from experiences of Jacob's Well. All I can say, they have a fine bar down there, a fine bar. Yeah, so I mean, obviously they've got to be able to talk to each other and communicate. So all that sort of stuff is interchangeable almost. The vessels now are very much, again, Coast Guard, they're a little restricted in what they could buy. It's got to be Coast Guard approved. What you want for your area, maybe not what national body sees. Whereas with the marine rescue side, you got the money, go for your life. Okay. So that's the way it's been. But having said all that, most of the boats are probably all made by the same maker anyway. There's only probably 2 that are really knocking out everything for the police, the army.
Yeah. So what's the age of most of the fleet then? Are they sort of do they vary a lot, or they have most of them up to sort of date and up to speed?
It varies. Our primary vessel in Weeper is coming up 23 years, but it's quite a well preserved, well looked after, well maintained, and it would go probably for another 10 or 15 without. In fact, we're keeping it. We're getting a new one, under this brand new world regime. We're getting a brand new one in October, I think, but we'll be keeping the old girl because she can go further. Mate, distance is the tyranny in the Gulf and that area where we don't need, well, we need fast boats, but we need boats that can go 600 kilometers, and petrol just, you just can't get that. You're sitting on a bomb,
Yeah.
We prefer to work with diesel where we can.
I would have thought that would all be diesel.
Yeah, well,
Marine diesels.
we have a lot of new boats coming off now under the new regime. We
Yeah.
are building boats as fast as they can build them in Yamba and New South Wales.
Yeah.
They're coming out from 12-meter down to 7 or 8-meter boats. Majority of them are standard fit, but if you have a requirement for in your area for what it might be, yes, you should get it. Well, you look at places like Southport, they're busy. They'll have 4 vessels going 24/7 and probably have 30 people, 35 people sleeping on the base at any time. They're they get through a hell of a lot of fuel, a hell of a lot of hours in a year down there. Whereas you go
just touching on that, how many people between both organisations have you got? Because the numbers you're talking about
I think we're looking at about 4,000, maybe more.
And they're all volunteers.
Absolutely. Well, prior to the amalgamation, I think Coast Guard might have had 2 paid people. We had 1 or 2 more in admin areas. And that's about it. But now in the new world, we have 35 people, which I'm a little upset that we're going to be paying an assistant commissioner now 200-something plus thousand a year to do a job that some poor volunteer's been doing for 20 years for nothing.
Yeah. I suppose
I have trouble swallowing that. I really do.
I suppose that's the price you pay when the government's involved and they want to decide and things like that. But hopefully you can operate and get things done with as little interference as possible, and hopefully the commissioner or whatever has a nice little home somewhere, and he just stays there and lets you get on with your business.
Well, we are all right. Okay, so because we're now part as SES is now that we're part of police. We will maintain our own independent budget there that will be insulated from QPS completely. And I'm now saying to our new chief officer, without casting dispersions too much, but I think we're all well aware that how much difficulty police are having in retaining paid staff, leaving in droves, and the people that are staying just probably can't afford to leave. And that whether that's the style of management or whatever it is, I've said to Tony Wolf, the chief officer, that I'm thinking at this point at some stage the volunteers are going to need a union or a rep to just stand between the commissioner and our volunteers. And the further this goes on, the more I think we may have a position, paid or unpaid, in that area for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's in our day. I mean, people like yourself and I lined up to join the military based on our previous generations service, which they did. My father was in the RAF, so I joined the RAF. Yours was in the Navy, so you joined that. But there wasn't, and I joined as an apprentice, and we were electronics course, the radio electronics, and we had our course had 73 kids come in from all over Australia, mainly rural Australia, from Queensland down to Victoria, Tasmania, and Western Australia. So there never seemed to be problems with people volunteering in those days, but I stayed in until about 94, and I could see the writing on the wall that I wouldn't join, and I wouldn't advise anyone to join the direction it was going then. And so I can understand why some people balk at joining the services, the way it's set up these days and its focus. And I suppose the same system is a problem with the police in regards to they don't feel appreciated. And there's a lot of other considerations just other than just doing your basic job that you really love to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, particularly if you're in an industry where serious stress can be an issue with your crews, your staff, that you really need to keep an eye on people quite closely, particularly in the early days when they're maybe not with us, been quite so long. And I think, it's an area that Queensland Police are very good at, funnily enough. I think they are, or they're improving. It wasn't so hot a few years back, but I think it is improving, and we'll be relying on those resources to look after our people in that area. They did come on board very quickly after the SeaWorld helicopter collision, and we had some crews were on the scene pretty much as it happened, so they were quite exposed to some fairly difficult situations there. And police picked it up very quickly. The Queensland Fire and Emergency Services didn't appear on the scene, but the QPS were onto those crews very quickly and walked them through it over the next few weeks, which was great. So there's some benefits for us. Certainly, hopefully, I mean, it's the water police that we deal with. We deal generally with water police, occasionally general duties, not that much. So they're all familiar faces to both organisations in your area, and great working relationships without exception in every one of those centres. So both organisations have always been able to self-activate, which from a volunteer's point of view is very important, that they can go when they want to go, when they feel they need to go.
I suppose too, the people in the water police are slightly different from the people in general duties. And I found that when I was down at Point Cook for a while, because it was one of the last places besides Sale, although Williamstown's maintained its sea rescue capability. And we used to have people who were, we had fairly large boats for sea rescue and that, because planes could go down, especially Point Cook, where they were training sort of thing. So, and I met a few of those guys, and they were completely different. It's like they weren't in the Air Force sort of thing. It was like they were just this
more relaxed, much
set
more
of different people.
Yeah.
They had a specific special job, and they loved what they did, and they knew exactly what they were doing. And the other thing is, they felt appreciated all the time because they were on site. The pilots saw them every day out sitting out in the ocean, waiting for them to come in wrong or something like that. So the pilots were fairly secure in the knowledge that if something did go wrong, well, at least someone would come and drag them out of the water. But they were definitely a different caliber of people.
Absolutely. It's nice to mention that. Yeah.
But I tell you what, they're pretty hard taskmasters when you were just trying to liaise with them on a different sort of thing, just about setting up communications. It was their way of the highway, and it just did become a bit of an issue at sometimes, because sometimes other people do have to have a say in the organisation of what the operation or exercise is. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. They are they're a different breed, and I mean, we're very happy to be working with them. We've been working with them for years, so both organisations, I think, are quite willing to go forward there. You mentioned earlier about the blue cards. As I've always said, particularly, I mean, it's one thing on the East Coast, but blue cards for the areas that I look after, it's a whole different kettle of fish. The more remote you get, as I always say, people that live where the bitumen stops live there for a reason. And these are the people that are really where you get more pushback than what you would get somewhere else as a rule. Whether there's a valid reason they're not, I don't know. But I know that these people, and particularly with some groups I'm thinking of now, Burketown, Corumba, Mornington Island, Weipa, all have original founding members, all have members that started the thing off 25, 30 years ago. I mean, that's a huge ask when there's maybe only 5 of you or 6 of you to a base. So you're virtually going to every job every time, maintaining the boat, doing all the things that Southport has, 300, 400 people to do. So to say to those people after 25 years or 30 years, I'm sorry, you're no longer wanted because you don't have a blue card is absolutely just pull their teeth out one at a time and send them on their way. I mean, it's disgraceful. So, and as you alluded to, I think earlier, and it's another story again with the Indig. I mean, half of them, I mean, they have difficulty getting a driver's license, a birth certificate, all of these things. And I understand there is some creeping progress in finding ways around that, and it needs to happen. But I still is beyond me why we would need a blue card after all these years. We never ever had an incident that never looked like being one, and we're never in that situation. Only one unit in Queensland out of both organisations has a cadet unit, and that's in Port Douglas, and it's very well managed, run in conjunction with the school. And they all have the appropriate, whatever they need to operate that. But that's been a great success, that one up there. So yeah, blue cards are going to be an issue, and it's more likely the older experienced ones are the ones we're going to lose. We're going to lose a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience when they put the hammer down, if they put the hammer down.
I think that's the problem. People have already done decades of service and honourable service, and even services being recognised for, by the government or the authorities and that. And it does seem to be an affront. And myself, I take it personally as well, because you've got the record for 20 odd years or whatever. You're well known in the community. It seems completely unnecessary to you, and it just frustrates you, and it can frustrate people to the extent that they just say, no, I'm not doing it because I don't feel the need. I feel it's an insult to the service that I've provided for 20 odd years. And if you can't make or come up with policies that allow me to continue to do the job without this enforcement of some sort of protocol that you think's important, especially for a person who has nothing to do with children on a daily or regular basis, won't even engage on it with them even 90% of the time. Maybe there might be a rescue where you have to rescue a child, but that should never be the issue. And when we understand where blue cards come into it in regards to those people who work on a daily basis with children, and especially in an area where there's a constant flow of different people within the premises that they're using.
Correct. Absolutely, 100%. It's still to be dealt with. I mean, we're getting to the pointy end of that situation now. As you roll a unit over into the amalgamated organisation identity, the crew members at that base should then be holding blue cards. So we're not at that yet, because there's been, surprise, there's been some, Jake as well as one of the first units to transition, and I don't think it got past the first meeting, the first hour of the first meeting, when they realised that before they can transition to Marine Rescue Queensland, they need to, per the constitution of that unit, and all VMR units throughout the state, all have a similar thing saying that they must surrender the equipment, but they can only do it to a like organisation. That would be another charity. So the thing stops dead. Instead of the government now taking possession of all this stuff, everyone packed up and went home again. 5 years, So, and this is where I think we're at the point where they realise now that there's a little bit more work to be done. We're happy to cut the ribbon, have the Parliament House or whatever he wants done, whatever.
Make it look good.
Yeah, Mark Ryan's, he's been good. I must admit, he's listened. On a few occasions, I've had to contact him and desperately say, stop this, please. Don't let that particular thing go ahead just yet. He's listened each time, and I take my hat off to him for that. But I think, the legislation is there now. The protection is there for volunteers. The official day will be the 1st of July, but you won't see a lot happening on the water for some time. The other issue that I am concerned about is the the idea they put forward that they would like our services to be free, totally free, like an ambulance. And you notice when they made ambulances free, you've never been able to get one since. And they make hospital beds free. It's almost impossible to walk in and get a bed. And here we go with unpaid people now having to shut their shop to come out and get you. It's free. Well, why would I fill the boat right up? Anything goes wrong, there's no penalty here.
Okay.
7 days a week. So I'm not entirely happy with the free thing. A lot of the units do have their own club.
Yeah.
Where you pay your $80 a year, and we'll come and get you, and we'll invite you to education courses or whatever else you want to do for your $80. The government's saying no more. We're paying, taxpayers are paying for everything now, so there's no need to do that. Why would they pay $80 when it's free? And we're saying, well, there's probably a reason why we do make them pay $80, So that one's yet to be sorted out. I don't know who's going to win that one. But there's got to be some penalty. There's got to be something. Otherwise, we all know it's out there.
I mean, well, this is the stupid mentality. I mean, there is an expectation on most people, even for government service, that there is some sort of user pay portion.
Yeah.
And
There's a living.
that's readily acceptable. What's not acceptable to taxpayers is when it's blatantly free and bloody they're stuck with the bill. I mean, if you look at the thing of 50 cent fares that the government's just come out with, and that, I mean, as it is, every taxpayer is basically slugged $11 for every public service commute, because it's just subsidised because it just doesn't make enough return. I mean, for users not to pay something is silly. And 50 cents is a ridiculous amount. Even the fares that they were paying was only represented somewhere between 15 and 17% of the total cost of running the railway or bus services, whatever. So, and most people don't begrudge paying a small, small or reasonable contribution for access.
Yeah, the issue now will be that you will have, for instance, in Townsville Coast Guard is a very successful operation, very well supported by the city. And they will, I am pretty sure, will not join the new organisation. And they're quite welcome to stay outside. Anybody is. There's no Fremantle in WA, when it went to VMR, Fremantle stayed out of their own choice and did very well. Never a worry. Well supported. Townsville very much like this. But the problem lies here that the units on either side will be offering free services. Coast Guard will continue to charge in Townsville. So the other units will get worked to death covering what Townsville used to do. So particularly when you get along the East Coast where they're a lot closer together, this is a bit of a problem, because clubs that are making money now, that's finished.
Yeah.
The government are not interested in them having these marine assist clubs. But then on the other hand, you're saying, well, why did they need them in the first place? Well, probably to buy other equipment, which is now going to be bought by the government anyway. So it's a catch-22. In Weipa, we had raised a considerable amount of money put in the bank. And now I've heard that all these accounts will be emptied out as you transition.
To government coffers?
Yeah.
Same old story.
And so my instruction to a lot of the units is buy everything you've ever wanted. Go and get a bigger ice machine. Weeple bought 2 new jet skis, and they've gone flat out. So I think that's my advice. But Coast Guard, unfortunately,
can't do that.
Money.
So
I don't know how they're going to get around that. Hopefully they can, but it'll depend on timing of severing with National and how much time they've got to do something with that money. But it's money they've earned. It's money the community has put aside for them to do something with in that unit.
And that's another important part of these sort of organisations, and every volunteer organisation it's the community input and the camaraderie with the wider community. They people come in, they'll organise fake sausage things or whatever, and raise money, and the community, most communities relish that sort of thing, and then also they don't mind giving to the groups, and then they see the groups, flourish and sort of get new equipment, and appreciate the efforts that all the people who donated money, when they see the volunteer organisation doing its job.
Yeah, it's it's going to be a touchy point, and the government needs to handle this very carefully, and they're between a rock and a hard place on how they're going to do it. I think the original plan hopefully has gone out the window, but we'll wait and see. I think that we're 5 years, 6 years into this now, and I think we're now due to stop and just reset this. So a lot of things that were almost put in stone, I think now are a little bit more fluid, and hopefully that these accounts, we can come to some understanding there. But I mean, the bottom line, and I've always said this about when we go to the government cap in hand, and particularly in the bad old days when we were trying to run 26, 27 bases on $2 million a year. And that include, like, a boat's going to cost you $750,000, one boat, and you've got 27 bases with boats. It was never enough money. But when we've had to go cap in hand to the government for something, and we didn't look like we were going to get our way, I've said it all the time. If the push comes to shove on any of this now, at this late stage, the bottom line is the government can't do this without us. If we say we're coming out of the water, we're pulling the boats out, and we're quite entitled to do that, the water police would die. They've not got any chance of taking the workload on. So it's a lovely thing to be able to poke a hand and you hold all the aces. And we do that. How far we might have to push that at some stage, I don't know. But I know with my time in the SES that representation by volunteers doesn't go up the chain very far. In fact, just once it leaves your unit, that's the end of it. It's all paid staff. But on our side, and I fought really hard for this on a few committees along the way, that we keep the volunteers as far up that chain as possible, so that they still have control over this as much as possible. And I think we've achieved that. We've got them right up to regional level. And even I think, once we become really formalised, we'll still be volunteers. At the end of the day, they still can't do it without us. If it, otherwise I would really be worried. If I didn't have those 4 aces, I'd be really worried.
Well, with going back to the blue cards, do you think there's going to be any sort of movement on that? Because I know the Catters have been fairly strong in trying to get some sense in regards to the blue card, especially in remote communities and things like that. Do you think the government has the capacity to see reason going forward and sort of, I don't know, make exceptions or come out with a structure that allows, current people to retain their positions regardless, or something like that? Or is it just an intransigent bureaucracy that won't move?
It'll depend where you are. So if we're talking about Burketown and they enforce the blue card, there'll be nothing. The doors will shut, the boat will be towed away, and it will turn to dust. There's no if, no, there's only a couple of people there, and they're not interested. They're not interested in blue cards whatsoever. It's a bit of a, we've been good enough all these years, and now all of a sudden we're not attitude. So go find somebody else. Well, in a town of 120 people, that's a little difficult.
Yeah.
And then and these other remote units, some of them will go across, not too badly, but others are going to dig in on this. And that will be the government's challenge to, is it going to be one size fits all, or is it? Because they are going to have, to me, Burketown's a shining example. There's only 2 blokes there doing it.
I suppose the thing is that we know that the Catters have been trying to do it and the government hasn't been moved yet. So I don't know the people you'd have to deal with, but hopefully some common sense prevails.
Well, yeah, again, as I'm saying, this is now like take two. We're going way back now, and I think we're going to go through a whole lot of things we've been through before and look at it as a little bit more from the volunteers' point of view and not so much from the government department's point of view. They came, they listened, and then they go off and go and do it anyway. And it'd be another month or so before we'd meet again, and then it's already done. So, and this has been going on without any continuity. There's just been successions of people that just do projects. They come in, they do a project on marine rescue for 6 weeks, and then they go and they're working on the buses, and they're working on sewerage, and there's no passion there. There's no feeling for what's really going on underneath the surface. And
it's just a matter of process and procedure,
Pretty much. Yeah, I'm here. I'm signed on for 3 months to get this done. And I'm going to get it done because it's going to be on my resume when I leave. It's ticked off. The records they've left behind is substantial.
So on the Coast Guard service, have you had to deal with numerous or the individual groups, or have you been able to sort of talk to a little bit of a more centralized body, or
a lot of time
they have their own delegates?
Yeah, a lot of time has been spent at the coalface with individual units. There wouldn't be a unit anywhere in the state that hasn't had visits, and on most of them would be several visits from different groups at different times. Some of them have been town hall meetings, some of them have been individual meetings, Zoom meetings, and then feedback from people that attend these different committees on different subjects. That gets fed back, or it should do. So, as I said earlier, right at the beginning of this, it's been difficult to get the facts back down the line. It has been really difficult. And Coast Guard seem to have a lot more trouble, possibly because their management have a lot more to lose. As I said, Queensland's the only jewel left in their crown. And once it's gone, it'll be a greatly reduced organisation. So they're hanging in for big bucks. They want big money for the boats, which incidentally have been, as I said, they were only getting $2 million a year to run all their boats from crews and fuel and insurance, and $2 million doesn't go anywhere near it. The boats and everything are there because people donate it.
But
to give National Coast Guard now 10 million, 22 million, whatever the figure's going to be.
What are they going to do with it? I mean, there's no organisation left, so what? And they can't. And they must. What be interesting to see what their charter is, to how they expel the residues. So it'd be interesting.
This is this thing again about it's got to go to a like-minded charity. So okay, well, it would probably go to national, but like you said, they've only got a couple of boats in a couple of states. I mean, there's a limit to how many boats you can fit in a boat shed. So I think it's the government's running out of time to get this. So as I said, they had one job here, and that was we could do the rest ourselves. They wouldn't agree to that, obviously, but it would have been a lot easier. But they've still got that one job. They haven't managed to do this after 5 years that make that severance. Now, there's certainly a hardball way to do that, and just put a stroke through it, and that'll be the end of it. Sorry, thanks for coming. But I'm trying to keep pacified.
So just at this position you are now, all right, you go through and do the ceremony on 1st of July, but how long do you think it will be before you dot the I's, cross the T's, and make everyone with a smiley face?
Couple of years.
Yes. Is the government prepared to sort of, do you think, do that? Or
yeah, they're committed. I mean, yeah, they're committed to this. There's no doubt about that. They're here for the long haul. And the process, the way they want to do, as I said, is to just take 3 or 4 units at a time, 2 Coast Guard units in different places and 2 BMR units in different places again, and transition them and learn from that to go into the next 4 and so on. So at that rate, I'm thinking it's a couple of months, at least 3. So yeah, you've got this. It's a very complicated thing as far as you just think about the properties and what they're sitting on. Some are on council leases, some are freehold, some are half belong to the yacht club. It's a nightmare for the government to take control of all these properties. There's a lot of work to be done there, a lot of work, because it'll all come under Q build now. They'll be responsible for all of this stuff. So they're working their way through building by building at the moment, and legal's working through leases and freeholds, and there's every type of agreement you can possibly imagine on these places. Some of them are handshakes.
Maybe it would have been good just leave everything it was, but just get more money to do what you need to do.
That's all we wanted. We could have done all this ourselves. State level, the two state councils could have come together and done this. Just get rid of national. We'll look after the rest. We'll talk about the money when we got it done.
And obviously the model of each unit being an individual incorporated body, you know, I just find incorporated bodies, associations, just such an easy thing to manage. You know, just it's such a simple process. It's also a fairly cheap process in regards to the cost of establishment, the meeting the statutory requirements each year, and it's not difficult for most lay people to sort of, you know, come up to speed, meet the requirements of the corporations, corporations. And it's like I say, it's a dream sort of situation in regards to separating individual property protections against the whole association thing. I mean, it is really whoever came up with it, you know, did every volunteer organisation a great favour. Whether it's a sport club or whatever, but it's just a dream way to do things.
Absolutely. So we'll see how that goes. That's how I'd like to see it stay that way. I really would. But he who controls the purse probably controls a few other issues.
Yeah,
we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm prepared to come back now and look at this completely fresh again. Hopefully, the government is doing the same thing at their end as we speak. And the next time we meet in a month or whenever, we may hopefully have a bit more of a roadmap on how all these little odds and ends are going to be sorted out. But I mean that when it's all said and done, it's the volunteers.
That's right. I mean, and the communities.
Yeah.
Because they are integral part of the communities. And that's what the government doesn't quite get in the picturesque things, especially when they're in Brisbane and they've got this way of working. They don't see how, especially in regional centres, how these volunteer organisations brings the whole community together and how they are so essential in regarding to making the fabric of the community and holding the bonds of the community together, especially the smaller ones.
There's no passion, Bill. That's what it is.
No, it's just a job. Like it's somewhere in my flexi hours, I'll get around to doing it. But in the meantime, I think of knocking off early on Fridays or whatever, and that's the end of it. But like you say, with the volunteers, especially in something like the Marine Rescue and the Coast Guard and that, you know, you're looking at after things for 24 hours a day, basically got some sort of coverage. You know, you're putting your life on the line in a lot of cases. And it does require a passion. It requires a complete different commitment, and people just in government just don't get it.
I don't think so. I don't think I've yet to see the passion with any of them. It's the project people, little boxes, and they progress out the other end onto sewerage. It's just that's just the way it is. You can say the words to them. You can try and put it into some context that understand, but when at the end of the day, it's what comes out in black and white of somebody's printer somewhere.
Maybe there should have been a permanent crew on the project thing, and they should have all been dragged up to Weeper and Tully and that, and dragged on the boats and see what's
Oh,
involved in
we've
that.
done all that. We have done all that. Yeah, we've done all that.
Oh, well, that's
No avail to no avail.
sounds like a bit of a beast of a thing. But look, we wish you well with ongoing togetherness and coordination. And we hope it all goes well. So if you just like to just wind up and give us a few points in regards to what you see is the next step of the journey, especially say in the next before July 1, what has to essentially happen, and B, the journey out, 6 months or so from that, and how much hair you got to have left after it.
Okay, so I think over the next probably even now I mean it's a lot of work to go back over now and rewrite and scrub out and whatever it is, reduct. But my main concern for this to really make this work is that the deck crews must understand exactly what's going on. They must not be left out of this. And it's been a difficult thing to do, because they're spread all over the place. And when you do go to talk to them, half of them are probably at work or asleep or whatever. So again, it's difficult to get this message out to everybody. But I think at the end of the day, the crews that matter, the crews that do the work, are so used to working with the other mob. I don't think they're going to see much difference on a day-to-day basis whatsoever. So long as we keep them informed, go a little bit gently. I mean, Coast Guard are a little bit, they're a bit shell-shocked. They've been battered around the ears for many years, and I don't know if they quite grasp the situation that they're going to be running their own shows pretty much. And that'll be a huge change for them. As I said, I've been on both sides, and Coast Guard's very, very much from the top down. So I think they will enjoy starting to have that freedom of running their own units and having the onerous workloads taken off of those boring things. Why you can never get a treasurer, you can never get a secretary. Nobody wants to do that. So that'll all be done for them now. And I mean, that's a big thing. And I guess with training also, that's a bonus for them. And that's well underway. The training side of it, I'm quite happy with what's happening there. A few minor changes, but pretty much the same, but a little bit stronger with paid trainers. So look, I don't think we're going to, if you're out there in your boat, you're not going to see much difference, except probably some new livery on the vessels, the new vessels, not so much the old ones, but the newer ones coming out in new livery. And the uniforms will, as I said, you'll probably get one unit, maybe in your area, will suddenly appear in a different uniform. But other than that, I don't think the boating public will see much difference. And the whole point of this is so the transition is seamless from the receiver's point of view. They probably won't see much difference at all. But it's been a huge learning lesson to look at both organisations and really deep dive into them. And they've come out of it pretty well. I mean, considering all the years they've operated in some horrendous conditions, we have nothing to report. There's no safety issues, and that's quite surprising with the amount of volunteers and where we put them. That there hasn't been. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater in the new regime. But I think if the fly in the ointment now is going to be a change of government. The election now is looming large, and that could really, I don't know where that could go. I don't know. I mean, I spoke to somebody from the opposition and said, well, what happens if you get in? And their suggestion was, well, we wouldn't change anything. You just send us a bill once a month. I thought, that's a hell of a lot simpler. Just whatever your costs are at the end of the month, send your invoice in.
Yeah.
Give us a loan. I thought,
that's even better. So, yeah.
If I've got to pay for a trainer to come in and train, well, it goes on the invoice.
That's it. I suppose, and long as there's the budget and you've got an idea that what's been eaten up and what's left, well, then if there's a bit too much left at the end, well, then you make sure there's some other things you've got to do.
Because I mean, they're very good. I mean, they've been handling these budgets, $2 million budgets for many years, and always manage to save a little bit at the end of the year. We're very good at it. With 29 million, we can manage it quite well. Thank you.
Well, okay then, Peter. Look, thanks very much for the night. I hope you got your message across. We'll be sending you a copy, links to the video after, so you can send it out to the various members, and hopefully you can use that. They can post it on the Facebook pages and that to get the message out for the members. I suppose maybe you should finish with saying something to the existing crews in regards to what you're looking forward to too.
Well, one thing's for sure, I'm not going to miss fundraising. I mean, I can the Bunnings is a lot of fun on Saturday morning, but after 25 years, it really starts to wear thin. I'm looking forward to this lovely bundles of money coming our way that we can really start to. I mean, this will turn Queensland's rescue service into a frontline, world-class marine rescue outfit that everybody in it will be so proud to be part of this. This is going to be a cracking show. It really is. And we just have to get the right people now into the right jobs. And look out, here we come. This will be a huge change for us.
And it'll be a model for others, hopefully.
Hopefully it will be. I'm thinking I'm off to Indonesia this weekend to talk to some people over there about, and I have been having some meetings over there over the past years, see what we can do. We send lifesavers over there, so I'm sure we can help them out. Yeah, and I would suggest anybody wants to get in touch with me, rank and file peoples from anywhere, by all means, come on. I've got a great bar here at home. Come in and have a beer and ask me what you want to know.
Well, I don't boat, and I wouldn't even swim in the water up here. So, but yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing your bar either, seeing I'm only just down the road.
Oh, you're welcome, Bill, anytime.
Okay then, Peter, look, thanks very much for your time tonight. Look, it's greatly appreciated. If you just stay on the line for a sec, I'll
Sure.
just wind up the show and announce next week's guest. Thank you. If you enjoyed tonight's show, please like, share, and subscribe to our Facebook page, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. My guest next week will be the return of Hayden Walker. Now, Hayden was on a couple of years ago, and he gave us an update on his long-range forecasts. And as I remember, when he left us last time, 2 years ago, he said we're in for a continuation of La Nina, and then a short El Nino. Then we'll have a sort of negative, stable, neutral period, and we'll go back to La Nina. And guess what? That's exactly what it's shaping up to. So there are some people out there who can call the weather long in advance, much better than our weather bureau that can't seem to do it from one day to the next. So please join me next week when we have Hayden on again. Thank you.